All right, good evening, everyone. We're just going to give it a few more minutes here. It looks like we've got 28 people on. Oh, 34. Here we go. Now they're coming. So let's just give it a couple minutes here. My name's Danny Storlina. I'm the girls coaching director at Minnesota Thunder Academy, and we've got Erin Chastain, Erin Hussey from her days at the University of Minnesota as a all Big Ten captain and Wayzata Trojans high school state championship, right? Wayzata. So we've got Erin here, and we're just going to give it a couple minutes, and then we'll get it going here. So just hang tight for us, and we'll start in like a minute or two. Register, and we just sent it out to basically our college recruiting age. So it's good to see everybody on here. As I mentioned before, my name is Danny Storlene. I'm the girls DOC at MTA. And we're fortunate enough to have Erin Chastain, University of Minnesota women's soccer coach with us tonight. So we're very, very grateful to have you, Erin, and nice to see you again.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Hopefully I can be helpful with some great information for your players.
I'm sure you're going to be great. Erin was out watching our teams play the other night last week, Wednesday, I think it was. So always nice to have you, that's for sure. Erin, give us a little bit about your Minnesota roots, playing and going to the University of Minnesota and now returning home, and just kind of give us a rundown. I know we've got a lot of players that dream about being Gophers someday, and I know you got to live that dream. So just tell us a little bit about you.
Well, I grew up in Wayzata and played for Wayzata High School. So we won a state championship for Wayzata. For the current coach too, he's still coaching, Tony Pesnecker. And then had the opportunity to play at Minnesota for 4 years and had a great playing career there. And really that was kind of where I established that I wanted to be a coach. And after graduation, had the opportunity to go be an assistant at Northwestern University. And then from Northwestern, went out to Santa Clara and was an assistant there for 5 years. And then took a head coaching job at DePaul. And that's where I've spent most of my coaching career as a head coach for 14 years. And this job opened up last year and was just fortunate enough to come back home. And we just closed on our house in Wayzata. So super excited to be 1.5 miles from where I grew up and have my kids go to school where I went to school, and then to be at Minnesota. So I think, just really exciting times for me and for my family, and to be even to come back out to Holy Angels and watch you guys last Wednesday. It's a really, really neat opportunity.
Well, it's certainly great to have you back in the state. I know our friendship goes back quite a few years. Maybe we won't date ourselves, but it's certainly nice to have you back.
I will say I remember you coming to our games when I played at Minnesota. So that was back in '93.
I thought we weren't going to date ourselves. That's great, Erin. Tell us a little bit about some things that, knowing what you know now as a recruited student athlete back in the day, and were there things that you did that helped you to get to the point where you're at, or things that maybe you would have done differently in the recruiting process? I know it's a different journey for everyone, but maybe just share a little bit, a story or two about your journey.
Yeah, I mean, I think you go into the college recruiting process with a mindset, and you just have to stay open. And I think my process, I thought I wanted to go away. I thought I wanted to go away to school. I visited BC and UVA and Minnesota, and that was kind of my final 3. And I just got a gut feeling about my decision and what the right fit for me was. And that happened to be Minnesota. But I think just staying open and making sure you gather enough information as possible to make a really good decision, because as everyone on here knows, the transfer portal has exploded. And certainly I think when you spend all this money and time to try to find the right college fit, you want to be there for 4 years, hopefully. That's not always the case, and sometimes you can't avoid that. But certainly I think the more homework you do on the front end and the more preparation you do, the better off you're going to be at the end of the day. So I think doing your homework, that's number one. And number two is really kind of being a great self-evaluator about what your level is, what role you want to have on a particular team or within a particular program. And then is that realistic for you? And that's where conversations with you and their coaches come in, and making sure you're identifying a school that if you want to be a starter, that's realistic for you. Because, you know, if it's not and you go there, my guess is there's going to be a level of unhappiness. And certainly the more, I guess, the more homework you do on what role and what's realistic, the better off you'll be at the end of the day.
You talked a little bit about the fit and Minnesota being a great fit for you, and obviously it's a fit for many student athletes, and some it's not the right fit for whatever reason, academically or soccer or the part of the country or whatever it happens to be. You mentioned you want to go away to the fit piece. We try to talk to our players about that a lot. Do college ID camps help with giving players kind of an idea of where they might fit when they come to your camp, or anybody's camp for that matter?
I think ID camps are great to kind of go experience a college campus, maybe get a feel for a staff and a coaching style of that staff. And then hopefully if they have current players in the mix in that camp, that's obviously nice because you can kind of get a feel for what their personalities are and what their experience has been at a particular university. But I think, again, it's about doing your homework about those ID camps, making sure that the full staff is running the camp, that it's not 200 players and you might not get seen, or you might not get quite the experience that you're looking for. So I think if you can go in with the mindset of, hey, this is to just get my name on someone's radar, experience the coach, and just get an overall feel for things, and that's our starting point, that's what they're great for.
And going to those camps one time typically enough, or multiple times? I know it's once again different for everyone in different schools, but maybe speak to that a little bit. I know you've had kids come 2 and 3 and 4 times probably to your camps. And
yeah, and I mean, sometimes I think if a student athlete comes that many times, I mean, you obviously know they're very interested in coming, but I don't think that's a necessary component of, hey, I need to go this many times to make sure I'm seen and evaluated. Because at the end of the day, again, ID camps are a starting point, and they certainly express interest from a student athlete side. But then my job as a coach is to then go watch them compete and play in a high level event with their club team, which I know that you guys are at. So I think 1 or 2 times is great, unless they're just looking for extra soccer and extra training, and that's the motivation for the multiple attendance.
sure. So you mentioned watching them play. We talked about this pre Zoom meeting here, but the video and how many times do you like to see players? I know there's no hard and fast. We see them 5 times and we'll know for sure, or we won't know for sure. But what is kind of your video versus in person, and how many times do you kind of like to see a player before you get an idea that, hey, this might be a great fit, or this just might not be the right fit for that
player? Video is tough. I think we used it throughout COVID because we had to. That was the only option. But now that we can see players live, that's such a better evaluation for us. We get to see the opponent. We get to see an entire half or an entire game. So obviously that would be my preference as a coach, to make sure we're seeing players live. The only time I really use video would be, say a player is from a club that doesn't have near the exposure that an MTA has. Then I might spend some more time on their video. But I think if you're playing for a club that goes to a lot of events and you play on their NPL team or their ECNL team, they are certainly going to be seen by enough coaches. Maybe it could pique my interest, a video or some highlights. But again, the next step is, hey, live, and I'd probably want to see a prospective student athlete, at least 2 or 3 times, and then, have some dialogue and talk to their coach and make sure from a character perspective, they're also a good fit. But certainly not just once. Everyone can have one good game or one bad game. So I think, 2 or 3 games and then a lot of dialogue and a lot of just homework on that particular player.
So along the recruiting lines there, I know we get a lot of questions from families, from players and parents about recruiting services, and it's $500 to do this and $1,000 to do that. And obviously this whole thing is crazy, the cost to play youth sports now compared to maybe when me and you played back in the day. But if you can talk a little bit about how those work, and if they're of value, if you use them, if you don't use them, how much you use them, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I use recruiting services mostly for international kids that I can't see, or don't have a lot of information on. Gosh, I think MTA is a recruiting service in itself. You guys are, a top club, and you're at a lot of events and have produced a lot of players at a really high level. So I think are kind of a proven pathway to collegiate soccer and to producing players that can play collegiate soccer. So for kids in the United States, I don't find myself using the recruiting services that much. I do get a lot of emails from an NCSA, and again, this isn't the Bible. There's going to be the right path for each player in your club, and if someone wants to use a service, good for them, and that's what they've chosen. But certainly when I get those emails, it's not personalized at all. So I don't even know how genuine the interest is in Minnesota. And that would be the same for other coaches. If you're at Milwaukee or Northwestern or any of these other schools, it's not personalized. So we might add them to our list of, hey, let's watch them if we get the chance. But certainly, a personalized email is going to go a lot farther than kind of a generic service email.
So talk through that process a little bit for us. So I'm a prospective student athlete, and I'm interested in school XYZ, whatever it happens to be. And my first steps with getting on your radar as a college coach, whether it was DePaul or Minnesota or Northwestern, Santa Clara, all the great places you've been, how would you say timeline, and how would I go about doing that?
Yeah, I think in 9th and 10th grade is when prospective student athletes start reaching out via email and introducing themselves, letting them know that they're interested in our school, letting us know what events they're going to be at, letting us know their GPA, letting us know kind of just overall their schedule. And then from there, 9th and 10th grade, we can't respond. So the key dates are June 15th following your sophomore year, which is when we actually can reach out directly or respond to any inquiries. And then August 1st following your sophomore year, which is when you can actually do an unofficial or official visit at a school. But the early process is, hey, get on coaches' radars. So send an email and maybe go to an ID camp and get on someone's radar if it works with your club schedule. And that's really the first step for players of that age range. And then really the heart of recruiting is going to be, that June 15th after your sophomore year through all the way up to their senior year. And I think you'll see student athletes committing at all different timelines throughout that kind of chunk. And certainly some commit earlier than others, but I think there's also ones that are committing in their senior year and go on to have a great experience.
So you mentioned in that piece there, the official visit, and the rules have changed obviously in the last whatever year or two now, which I think probably both of us would agree there's a lot of good changes that came about there. Can you speak to the difference between an official and unofficial, and tell us again the the timing of those and how that works.
Yeah, so you can start those following your sophomore year, August 1st. So August 1st prior to your junior year. And there's not a lot of difference between an official and an unofficial, other than the official is paid for and the unofficial is on your dime. So it doesn't always, if you take an unofficial somewhere, it doesn't always mean there's not a high interest level. It's just maybe it's to a local school and you don't want to use one of your 5 official visits on a local school. I guess that would be the main difference, though, is it paid for or is it not paid for? And again, for official visits, you only get 5. So you get 5 paid for visits, and then unofficial is unlimited. So you could take 5 unofficial visits to a school if you really wanted to, or 10 total unofficial visits because you just want to look at a wide range of schools, but only 5 official.
I feel like I don't know too many people that have taken 5, and maybe that'll change with the rules and all that. But I feel like most of the students didn't even take their official when it had to be your senior year when you could do it.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think it's, it's interesting because I think in my different experiences as a coach, it's been different for every student athlete. Some have taken their 5 official visits and then they've made a decision. Some have just taken a couple unofficial and then they decide based on that, hey, I want to commit. And then they just take an official visit after they've committed. And that's just kind of, I guess, a celebration of their commitment. And, it's kind of a cool thing for them to be able to do. So it is different for every player.
Yeah, I feel like that's been a lot of our players, and going back over the years where so many had committed at sophomore, junior year, where now it's a little bit different than that.
Yeah, and I do think that rule change has been a good rule change where we aren't now seeing commitments in sophomore years, and it's now in the junior year. And I think that's the idea behind that, was meant to just slow it down a little and make sure prospective student athletes aren't rushing to make a decision or being given deadlines by coaches and feeling like, oh gosh, if I don't say yes, I'm not going to have an offer, or I'm not going to have a spot. And so hopefully that junior year timeline will work a little bit better, and we'll see a higher success rate of players making decisions and staying at the places they go to.
You mentioned academics a little bit earlier, so just to kind of go back on that, I know you guys have a great academic tradition at Minnesota, and geez, being at Northwestern and Santa Clara and some of those great academic institutions. How important grades, test scores, just speak how your philosophy on the academic pieces for you and the Gophers, or maybe not the Gophers, but for you.
Yeah. I think obviously academics are hand in hand with athletics. So, you got to get it done in the classroom and on the field. And I think every coach is looking for the young women that can do that. And the other bonus of, hey, if your GPA is really good and your coursework is really good and your test scores are really good, is you can kind of stack academic aid on top of athletics. So it just makes your overall financial package that much better. And it also just shows a commitment level in the classroom, which, we go out and evaluate players on the soccer field, but we're also looking for players that can be successful in the classroom setting so that we have a great team GPA. And again, they could qualify for academic aid. And then also just from, hey, our job is to prepare you for life after soccer. And that means you want to go to school to play soccer, but also get a great education so that you're prepared for life after soccer. And so that's where all this work for these young women in the classroom is really, really important.
So you mentioned stacking the aid and the for some academic, some athletic. Example would be I could get 25% academic and 25% soccer money, and now I've got a half ride to the University of wherever. Is that
Yes, absolutely. And most schools are able to do that. Where you won't see the merit-based academic aid is at with the Ivy League schools or with Stanford or with even kind of like a Cal or some of the private schools that are smaller and really elite academic institutions. They're not going to give out academic aid. So the Ivy League doesn't give out athletic scholarships. So that's going to be a separator also. But the academic merit base at most schools is stackable, and most schools do give that out.
Yeah, we preach the academic piece, and where you can get, the example I always use is, if I was a great player, they'd probably have to give me the whole thing to get me, because I wouldn't get anything academically because I'm not smart enough. Where if you're that kind of player, you could get 50 academic and 50 athletic money, and now you got a full ride, and who cares? You're not paying for it, and your parents aren't paying for it. And as long as you can maintain whatever the GPA is, right, you're good to go. So we try to.
Yeah. And honestly, that shouldn't, I think sometimes I've met with parents before where they're like, well, why wouldn't you just give them that in athletic? And again, it doesn't have anything to do with the player eval. It's more about how can we get the most out of our 14 scholarships? And if we can stack academic, it's just helps us build a deeper, better roster.
Sure. You mentioned the number 14, so it's a good transition for us. 14 fully funded. Can you kind of speak a little bit about the number of scholarships? And I don't know how much you know about Division II and NAI and Division III, but at least at the Division I level, and talk about scholarships and what a lot of schools do with those scholarships.
Yeah. So 14 is, the total amount we can spread across our entire roster, and we can break that up however we'd like to. So we could have kids that are on 50% and then kids that are on a full ride, or kids that are on 25%, and it just has to add up to 14. And again, that academic aid is usually stackable, so it doesn't count against the 14.
Have you been at a school where it has counted?
What was that?
Have you been at a school where that money has counted? I know there are.
I think that's a new rule where it doesn't count anymore for all Division I. That's recent though. Division III doesn't have scholarships, so that there's really no scholarship stuff to talk. NAIA does, and so does Division II. So I don't know how many Division II has, but I know they have athletic scholarships. So, I think it's almost a science, right? Of trying to figure out how to build a roster with the 14, whereas like a volleyball is a head count sport where everyone's on a full ride. So it's a little different than that. But certainly a lot of money to go around for a roster. And then within that, there's also players that might have a recruited walk-on spot where they might not be getting any athletic money, so they count as a zero on the equivalency, of the 14, but are still a really valued member of the team, and still have the same. They get the same thing that everybody else gets. They get all the gear and training, and there's no difference between them and a scholarship athlete other than the financial piece.
Sure. What do we have? 65 Power 5 women's soccer programs. Is that right?
Yeah, that should be right. And then I think we're at 331 total programs. I might be off by 2 or 3 for Division I women's. That's a lot of programs. So a lot of opportunities for players to go on and play soccer and get a great education and have a great experience after MTA.
Well, in 1993, when you were playing for the Gophers, we didn't have 330 plus programs. It's great to see the growth of the sport, and I think we just need to find the right fit for. I think there's a spot if you want to play. I think there's a spot you can play for most women out there.
Absolutely, there's so many different opportunities. Whether it's, again, as you mentioned, Division I, Division II, Division III. NAIA. So a lot of wonderful opportunities because of the growth of the sport and where women's soccer has kind of evolved to over the last 20 years.
The Power Five conferences, if you had to guess, and I'm kind of put you on the spot here, but what do you think roster sizes are for the average? I mean, even if it was just Big Ten, you're going, but what are they carrying roughly?
Yeah, I can. It's very different across the board. I can say the range. I think the smallest roster you'll see is 22 to 23, which would be on the small side, and then there are also rosters of 35. So I think that's the spectrum. Probably average 28, and at football schools you might see larger than that because we're dealing with Title IX and football and how big the football rosters are, and to even things out and make sure that females are getting the same opportunities as men, they probably are asked to carry a little bit larger roster.
So we're chatting here with Erin Chastain, head coach of the Gophers. For some of you that just joined us, we're partway through here. You certainly can type in some questions in the Q&A piece, and just go ahead and type it in, and we'll try to get to some of those questions. We still have a few more places that we want to go with Erin on this conversation today, but we certainly would like to get some questions from some players and some parents. So if you want to type something in the chat, feel free, and I'll keep firing away, asking Erin some questions. Let's see where I'm at here in my head. I could go back. Sorry. So what are some common things, you're getting freshmen that come in and how difficult it is to play as a freshman, and what are some things that they're missing or that they would need to address as a youth player or even us as a club to get those players ready to play at a Power 5 school or a Division I school or wherever it happens to be, that they're missing out on, that we need to do a better job, or the players need to focus on a little bit more?
Well, our season is so short. We go from August to November, and then the playoffs is right after that. So it's really not a long period of time where we have 20 games crammed into that time. So the biggest thing is, one, you have to be very fit and ready. And I think one of the biggest things we see as college coaches is that freshmen they think they're fit, but they're actually not fit. And so are they 90 minutes fit? Can they come in and get a 17 on a beep test and be ready for the hard training they're going to kind of go through in the preseason and then leading up to the games? Because our preseason is 2 weeks. So if you're not fit right when you get to camp August 1st, the likelihood that you're going to be in a position to contribute as a freshman is very low. So that would be one. Two would just be speed of play and just being able to make decisions a little bit faster. And I think they're under, now they've gone from playing with players their own age to playing with players potentially 4 years older than them that have all that collegiate experience. So I think that's more pressure, and you have to play quicker. And, the only way you really work on that is just high level training where they're forced to make decisions in tighter spaces more quickly. But I know you guys do a great job with your training, and I've had a lot of players from your club in the different programs that I've been at, and they all are pretty ready. So, but on a whole, I'd say fitness and speed of play. And then, sometimes 1v1 defending is the other piece that my colleagues and I talk about just, hammering home. So I think those are some of the pieces. And then the other piece is psychological of, a lot of players are coming into a college environment having been maybe one of the better players on their team, or just used to being in the spotlight. And now again, they're in a different environment. And so being able to just embrace the opportunity in a different environment and not be afraid and be brave and play like themselves. And that's a real psychological component that if they can kind of conquer as freshmen, that's really going to help them establish themselves on the early side.
Well, that's a great answer. What are the most important components to put in an email to college coaches?
Yeah, I would say grad year, number, so your jersey number, um, maybe what colors your team is in the games. So like our home, we're in blue or white, and this is my jersey number. This is my schedule at the next event, my GPA, and where I'm from. And then I would say just expressing why you're interested in the particular school that you're writing to, and making sure you do a little bit of homework on that school. So I think just looking how their season was, and maybe you have a player on the team that played at MTA, and you say, hey, I see you have a couple MTA kids on your roster. I would love to be a part of what you're doing there, and here's my schedule, here's my number, here's my grad year. I'm really interested.
The player profiles that you get at events, and we go round and round and round and round, and the time and money and resources spent on those. Talk about the importance, the significance, that kind of stuff, where we've got our parents handing them out. They do a great job writing down who was there and all that. But just talk about that process and what that looks like from your end.
Yeah, that process, we're always like, where's the person with the flyer? Where's the flyer? Right when we sit down. Typically they're all over it. So that's great. Yeah, I mean, those are helpful because obviously there could be number changes, and there's players that commit, and then we don't want to spend time watching those players. So being able to kind of check them off. But again, just that information of, are they committed or not? What grad year they are, what's their number, what's their GPA. Those are the most important pieces. I really don't care if it's on a thick, beautiful piece of paper or a white Xeroxed copy. I just want the number, the grad year, and then I can just write my notes on the sheet.
So it can be black and white, and it can be a regular sheet of paper and whatever.
It could be. It absolutely could be. I think we'd all be really fine with that. I know there's a lot of fancy ones with they're folded and they're thick and they look really expensive and they're 7 colors, but really we just want to see who could be a good fit in our program. And the only way we know that is the number and the grad year.
The SoCal Blues, the 01, 02, that 01, 02 group that they had over a couple years there, theirs might have been one of the worst ones I've ever seen, and that could quite possibly be the best youth girls team I've ever seen play. So
yeah, they were good.
It's always interesting how that works out. Okay, let me look in the chat here. What about different levels, college soccer? You mentioned it a little bit. I know most of basically all your stuff is the Division I level. The Division II, the Division III, the NAIA stuff. We talked about fits and opportunities. What else do you know? What else can you say about the different levels? Even within the 331 Division I programs. I just want to try to get to the fit piece, I guess, a little more.
Yeah. I mean, obviously from top to bottom, Division I is going to be the highest level. There are also some really good Division II, NAIA, and Division III schools. The difference is, like, if you look at, say, I'll use University of Chicago as an example, because that's a Division III school. I know the coach. They're a very good team, and it's a great academic school. Now they might, during their conference season, their games might be fairly easy. They're winning those. So those might not be as competitive. What will be competitive for them is the postseason. And when they get to that like final 16 of Division III. And then the hours spent at Division III are a lot less than Division I in terms of your training and how much of a time commitment it is across the year. So in the spring, where Division I is training 20 hours a week, Division III is only training like 6 hours a week, and they only have one game in the spring, whereas Division I has 5. So it's just a very different time commitment, but there are great experiences at both places. So I think when we talk about fit, it's what do you want out of your experience? Do you want high level committed, you are training all year round and you want to play against the best? You probably want to play Division I. Are you looking for a balanced experience where you're making a commitment and you're getting to play and you're getting that team aspect, but you don't want to do it year round necessarily as much, and you still want to compete, but maybe not as much? That might be more of a Division III route. And really, if you're looking at a school like a University of Chicago and you're a high academic student, soccer could be a pathway for you to get admitted to that school because it's so selective. But if you do really well in school and you have soccer on your resume and the coach likes you, they could use one of their kind of admittance spots to help you get admitted, which is a big perk when you're looking at that, maybe one of the top 10 schools in the country.
We've had other students who've gotten into places that might have been tricky for them to get into, big time academic institutions, and they got in with the soccer piece. So good for them.
Yeah, for sure. So, but the commitment level is going to be different. I don't know much about NAIA. Division II will be similar to Division I in terms of commitment level. They do, I think anywhere that's giving athletic scholarships, the expectation is that you're a student athlete. You are going to school to do academics and athletics and achieve at a really high level in both. And Division III, you're also a student athlete, but you're there to be a student first, an athlete second, and you'll have a little more time to be a student there. It's not probably as split.
Sure. With the player profiles, and we've got a few questions here. I'm trying to wrap these together because they're really important for the parents and players, and I think a little bit they're uncertain what should be included in, for example, their own player profile, things they send on. How far back do they go? Does it matter if they were the MVP of their 5th grade basketball team, or should it just be high school? Should it be middle school? What kind of matters for you when it comes to?
I think club soccer will be the most important piece. What club team do you play for? What events are you at? And then certainly high school, especially in Minnesota, because I would say Minnesota is one of the few places where competitively all the athletes still play high school soccer. Whereas, I came from Illinois where a lot of players just played ECNL year round and they didn't play high school. So, here it's a little more competitive in high school. So I think mentioning high school, and then depending on where you're sending, if you're targeting a high academic institution like Stanford, you're going to want to have your test score on there. You're going to want to have, if you take AP classes or honors classes, you're going to want to have a lot more detailed academic information. Where if you're, looking at, a school not in the top 10 in the country academically, I think a GPA and maybe a test score will suffice. I don't think you need to go deep into what courses you're taking. But certainly, your schedule of events, what club team, and, just making sure to send a reminder out before an event. Hey, reminder, I'm going to be at this next showcase. Here are my game times. Here's my number. Really hope you get the chance to come watch me play.
You mentioned the time of, the commitment for the student athletes. I played Division III and Division I, and certainly could speak to the commitment level and the intensity and all of that. What does an average week look like in a Power 5 conference school, from training to maybe like the first week preseason real quick, and then just an average week mid-season, the first week of October when the Big Ten gets started or something like that?
Yeah, preseason, we start August 1st, and that's when we'll kind of train twice a day, usually. We'll do some team building in there. We might do some film in there, but I would say during preseason, they're spending probably at least 8 hours of like some type of training a day with 1 day off a week. So that's kind of your preseason. And then when you get into your season, you still have that off day. Usually it's a Monday, because most conferences are playing on a Thursday, Sunday rhythm. So Monday would be off. Tuesday, you would likely have maybe 45 minutes of film. Then you'd have training from, I don't know, I'm just going to use just general times. So then you might go to training 2 to 4, and then you might do any treatment after that. Wednesday, you would have a training. You might have a lift, which would be more of a maintenance lift, injury prevention, body weight, ACL prevention, that type of stuff, core. And then Thursday, you would have a game, and this is if you're home. And then Friday, you would maybe do a recovery. You would do film again. Saturday, you would do training. You would probably do scout film on the team you're going to play on Sunday. Sunday, you would have your game, and then the week starts over again. So I would say it probably does equal about 20 hours a week when you add it up of committed time to athletics. And then, you throw school in the mix. And so it's a pretty packed day for them. I think Mondays tend to be the day that student athletes will have like a science lab or, a more time intensive class, because Monday is our off day. So that's kind of a rhythm, and then if you're away on that weekend, it's the same rhythm, except Wednesday would be your travel day. And then, you're away. Thursday you'd play, Friday you'd travel back. And then, Saturday you could be home on Sunday or away. So it kind of depends on the schedule, but it's a big time commitment for sure.
How much school are they missing?
Yeah, most schools have a policy where athletes can only miss a certain number of days. So typically coaches will look at that policy and then set up their non-conference schedule to make sure that they come in under that amount. I'm not obviously allowed to speak specifically about Minnesota, but I'll say generally in the schools I've been at, they're typically over in the fall missing maybe 4 or 5 days of class. So it's not that much. It seems like it when I talk about, and then you could travel, but again, half of games are typically at home and they're not missing a lot of school. And then some of those non-conference are prior to school even beginning in August. And so there's just that little chunk where they could miss on a Thursday and a Friday of a week.
And they're missing, multiple days now with school, with playing club. I think our 05 and our 06s will miss 4 days, I think it is this year, and depending on when they fly, and that stuff is a little bit different for each family. And
all schools will probably, be a similar setup where their professors get a letter prior to class beginning saying, so-and-so is a student athlete on the women's soccer team. They will miss class due to team travel. Here are the exact dates they will miss. And then, you have the same as I bet we have in college, which is highly motivated student athletes that get it done on the road and, do work ahead of time and do work on the bus and on the plane, and they get their stuff done.
All right, well, we're nearing the end here, Erin. I just wanted to really thank you for taking the time, coming out and doing the Zoom call for us. It was great seeing you at our training last week. I'm sure we'll see you around again, and then on the road recruiting different places for sure. But
yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you having me, and hopefully it was helpful for families. I think the process can seem really overwhelming and stressful, and take a deep breath, and there really is a great fit for everyone, and there's different levels for everyone. And again, I think it's just about being a great self-evaluator and doing homework on the front end and making sure that you're looking at schools that allow you to reach the goals that you have from a soccer perspective, but also an academic and social perspective, and making sure you set yourself up for life after athletics, which we all have to do.
For sure. Well, I hope we can have you again next year. This has kind of been our time to do it in this November period. So hopefully you guys are just finishing up a great run in the playoffs next year, and we gotta move it into December and not November.
Yeah, I hope so.
All right. Well, thanks. Always great to see you, Erin.
All right. Thanks, Danny. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.